What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? Welcome to another episode of a Stoked podcast. Uh, Missed you guys. We were off obviously last week because I was at a very very fun con, Northwestern ComCon. Um, it was very good. I did great. Got to meet a lot of new people. Um, I always generally have a good time when I go to cons. What's up, Kenji? Um, I always have a good time when I go to cons. Truth be told, very rarely do I go to a con. I'm like, man, I didn't have a good time. But this one was really good. It was done, I believe, it was done mostly by students at the college there, Northwestern. I believe that's the name of the college. Um, but yeah, I did really great, and I believe they said this was like the second year they were doing this event, and they're trying to get back in the swing of things as COVID kind of derailed them. Did let's see, Kenji asked, did I know any other creator? Actually, I was the only comic book creator there. There was a couple of people selling like comic book based toys and stuff, but no, I was the only guy there. So that was Tuesday. By the way, I'm stalling because our guest has not jumped on yet, but that's okay. Love talking to you guys. What's up, Savion? Man, if you doing finals, you need. I mean, I guess you could just listen, but I appreciate you listening. But yeah, it was really good. And then the Saturday, I did a Comics and Color Festival in Boston, which was phenomenal. Um, I did so well there. I gotta be honest. I had to take Greg Elise, his word for it. He told me they sell, you do well there, and I did well there. Plus, I got to meet him in person, which was great. Get to meet. I love getting to meet people who other creators there. Who else was? Calvin Chambers was there. Obviously, Kagan was there. Who else? There was a few other people. Some other. Oh, Javier Cruz Winnick was there. I got to meet him for the first time, which was not the first time. What am I saying? I've met him before, um, but I hadn't seen him in a while. Calvin, that was the first time I met Calvin. And there were a couple of other creators there, and I apologize if I don't remember your names because I'm terrible with names. But I got to meet a lot of new. David Krausen, uh, Harriet Tubman, Demon Slayer was there. It was a pleasure meeting him as well. Larry Stroman was there. I've seen Larry I swear like 3 times this year already, but it's always a pleasure seeing him again. And yeah, for one day, man, I did really good for one day. Okay, our guest is here, so I'm done filibustering. I'm gonna bring in this gentleman. He was on last time, but our show got canceled because I had to go do the dad thing and take care of my son. But I told him I would bring him on so we could finish our conversation. Um, Writer, creator, Cody Walker, welcome back. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. I apologize again. Uh, it was abrupt. It was abrupt cutoff. It was like my son was not feeling well, and
Mm,
my wife is very good to. She's got very good motherly instincts. Like, all
mm.
right, it's time to go. We got to go. We got to go.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I've been there plenty of times, so I hear you. It's all
so
good.
I think it was like a croup cough or something. I don't remember.
Oh, that's the worst. Yeah, that little
Yeah,
like barky cough and stuff. Like,
right. And it came out of nowhere because he was like
mm,
just fine, like 5 minutes,
yeah,
and then next 5 minutes, it was like, okay, we got to go to the doctor. But
yeah,
thank you for coming back on, man. I do appreciate it.
yeah. Glad to be here. Yeah, my daughter actually. We were at a comic book convention when she hit like 104 temp or something like that, and I was just like,
You
this
were
is
at a
a
convention?
Yeah, we were at a convention. Like
Wow.
she seemed fine, like in the morning, and then we were at the convention, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're burning up!" And so we had to take her back to the hotel, and I'm like, "We're in a completely different city, and I don't
Mm,
know what
you don't know
hospital to
anywhere.
take you to." And so I just ran down to the local Walgreens and hit her with as much like kids ibuprofen and medicine that I could get her, and so
You just drugging her up.
yeah, I mean, within 24 hours she was totally fine, but boy, that was a scary 24 hours of like registering temperatures that you're like, that's not possible. Like it was very
Yeah,
scary. It was the
I
worst.
mean, family can really crimp a
Mm.
career from time to
Mhm.
time,
Yeah.
but it's not on purpose, and
Yeah.
it's the greater good. I'll tell a quick story, and I've told
Sure.
this story before to people, but
Mm.
last year I did this con called Terrificon
Mm.
in Mohegan Sun Casino. Shout out to Mitch Halleck. Uh, and Jamari's here. He's always late. But
Hello.
anyway, I'll keep going. So I so the con started on Friday,
Mm.
and I was like, okay, I'm getting ready. So I think the week before or a couple of days before, my son got COVID.
Oh.
And so I'm masked up. I'm spraying everywhere, annoying the hell out of everybody because I was like literally like I cannot get sick because I
Mm.
had booked the hotel, paid for the all that stuff. I was like, cannot get sick.
Mm.
And my wife decided she wasn't going to mask up. She didn't want to have to do all that.
Mm.
And so the day I'm leaving to
Mm.
drive up, like before I get in the car,
Mm.
like I think I like either touched my wife's forehead or kissed it, and I was like, "You're hot." She's like, "No, I feel fine." It's like, "No, you're hot."
Mm.
And so she, "No, I'm okay." So I was like, "Okay." So I get in the car, and I think I got to the gas station, and then my wife calls me, and she's like, "I don't feel well," and I was like, "Well, I'm on my way," and
Mhm.
because it's probably best that both of us don't get it, but
Right.
I had to take care of that, and then when I came back, both of them were COVID out, and I'm
Mm.
still masked up spraying,
Mm.
but I think like over the next 2-3 days, my son felt better,
Mm.
but he still wasn't over it, and he just was like, "I'm just gonna cough in your face, Dad. Like I don't care. Like I'm just gonna cough directly in your face."
Yeah.
And he proceeded to do that over the next like 2 or 3 days, and then sure enough, mask or not, I got COVID.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's kids. They have no sense of personal space. We're just gonna cough in your face at all times.
yeah.
So
And then
that's all
I had a con and then a weekend off and then another con.
right.
So I was just like, I was praying that I get better within this time period. And then I think I tested myself like 2 days before I went to the other con because I had felt
Mm.
better by then. But I
Mm.
tested myself and I was fine. I was like, all right, I'm getting out of here. I'm just going to leave as fast as possible.
That's
But
funny.
but that's good, man. That's good. But welcome back and
Thank you.
thank you for joining us, Jamari. I mean, I know you are running the streets. That's your cue to
How's
talk.
everybody today? How's everybody doing today right now? I'm not even gonna lie to you. I am tired,
Mm.
but I'm here,
Awesome.
and I'm glad to be here. Glad you are back with us, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Are you are you state testing for school? Is that something that you guys do?
That's one of the things that's going on
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
same here.
That's one of the things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
So
last week for me. So I'm just putting in my time now. So
So
I am.
talking
Go ahead.
about we're talking about family. So how do you balance your family, your job, and then essentially your side hustle, like writing? Like
mm.
how do you balance it? Like do you have anything in particular that you do that you don't think anybody else does?
um I teach at a 4-day school week, so I always have these 3-day weekends. And so I think it makes the writing side hustle stuff go a lot easier because it's like um, I have my designated Mondays to either get grading done or do planning or just get writing done and stuff like that. And so that's that's really it's summers too. Like summers are my time of like I'm gonna get all of my writing done this summer. Like I've got 3 or 4 projects that I'm going to do. It will get done this summer. It has to get done this summer because if it doesn't, then when school starts, nothing's getting done. So
I get it.
yeah,
I get
yeah,
it.
it's a good thing about being a teacher is that you have you have some wiggle room in addition to planning and stuff like that in the summers. Like, it's just my Mondays. I set aside time. It's going to get done.
So I have a question for both you and Jamari. Since you're both teachers, you're both in the education system. Because I know it's different for a lot of people, but for on the whole, when the summers hit, like, how do you like budget for the summers, like when your bills, or do you just take on different, like, do you keep working through the summers?
For me personally, I still get like I have like a 12-month like paycheck and stuff like that, and so
Same.
yeah, so it's nice. Like, we had 1 year where they gave us all our summer checks all in May. And so I was like, I'm putting all of that into a savings account that I will not touch until the 15th of every month, and then I'll move money over. But that's really the only work that I do. I used to teach summer school back whenever I first started teaching before I had kids. And that was a really good, that was a real good summer hustle. I liked that a lot. So
Do you get paid on? Do you get double pay?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. You
okay.
get a really good stipend on that. My school doesn't really do summer school, though. My first school did, but this one really doesn't. And so I just cherish my time off with my kids and say, screw it. I don't really need anything else. So,
All right, Jamari.
Yeah, it's very similar. We did 12-month check. Last year I did summer school, but it wasn't for very long. It didn't, get a couple of dollars here and there. And this year I'm looking for stuff to do outside of it. I'm trying to crack into freelance writing, and get that as something to do where I can bring some money in, because that's my skill and I need to use it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's hard. I always find it really easy to freelance write, but it's much harder to get paid to freelance write. It's so much harder to get money.
Have you freelanced for anybody in particular?
Yeah, I used to be a webmaster for SecWart. So SecWart did well, they do like academic books and articles and stuff about comics. And so my first book, Anatomy of Zurin R, which is all about Grant Morrison's Batman.
Okay.
That was published through SecWart. And
cool.
yeah, for a couple of years, I was just posting articles from different people. Like, I would solicit different freelance writers, and they would give me stuff, and I would post it to the website. And we did that for a long time, and then they decided to go into just like the comic publishing game, and so they self-publish a lot of stuff, and they still do academic books and stuff, but it's nowhere near what it was about 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago, we were really like firing on all cylinders, and then I don't know, I think they got tired of the academic stuff and kind of moved. So it is what it is.
Yeah. So, how much effort do you actually put into to trying to freelance? Or do you just say, I'm going to do what I want to do? Or
yeah, it's mostly just I do what I want to do. Like, there's been a little handful of times while I enter into a contest or something like that, but I wrote a short story that won like a really small prize. It was like 100-word short story, just real quick flash fiction thing. It was about it's a true story about some first graders that found a heart buried in our school playground. Like, they just found a heart buried.
Was this horror?
No, this is I played it just straight fiction. Is that some kids found a heart, and they weren't like that. They had like the principal looked at it, the superintendent looked at it, we had the local police officer look at it, and no one could tell if it was human or animal. It looked too big to be human, but they weren't sure about animal. There were no teeth marks. It's not like a dog buried it or anything like that. No idea. That was like 2-3 years ago, and I still don't know the outcome of that, and I don't want to know. Like that's all
That
I.
sounds like
That's
an
it.
awesome horror movie. Like I
It's
literally came up with a whole story in my
Mm.
head just
Yeah.
hearing that.
Yeah, it's a
Like,
great start.
that's a great start.
Yeah.
I wish I had thought of that because
Yeah.
I've got a really great idea right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm never gonna be able to use it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
It's
Cody.
yeah.
Appreciate you,
Well,
man.
it's one of those that I just think it's like I kind of love the idea of me never knowing. I don't really want to know. Like I want it to be that like really in my mind the story is you can have something this major and terrifying and all of the people in power have no idea what to do with it. And that just seems like the most realistic thing to me. Just I don't know.
That's a great premise.
Yeah.
That's a great premise.
Mhm.
And
It's
I don't know. Are you a horror fan? Are you a fan of horror?
It's funny because like I wouldn't consider myself a horror fan, but I find myself wanting to write horror more than anything else. Like, I wrote a short story once that was supposed to be sort of a horror take on the Grinch in a way, like kind of the Grinch. It's not really the Grinch, but it's just kind of it's the same basic premise is that there's a thing that comes every Christmas and just steals all your stuff. And
So
and
like
you have
Krampus.
yeah, kind of. It's a little bit more like Cthulhu like though, because just tendrils and stuff, and you never really see it, and you have to pretend it's not there and stuff. And I don't know. I like horror concepts. I know that I don't really see a lot of horror movies. I saw Evil Dead Rise this past weekend, and that's the first horror movie I've seen in a while.
How was it?
It's hard to say. Like, are you a big Evil Dead fan?
So I've seen the original. I've seen
Mhm.
the original. I
Mhm.
kind of like the original. The
Yeah.
remake was just like traumatizing. Like,
Yeah.
and I like horror movies, but I was like, I had to watch in the sections. I was like, I got halfway through and I was like, I don't know if I can keep watching this.
Yeah,
thing.
I would say this one's more traumatizing than the remake even, and the remake was pretty upsetting to watch. I like the original Evil Dead. I love Evil Dead 2. Army of
Yes.
Darkness is
I couldn't
one
get
of
into the rest of them. I
I
can't.
love the second
Because
movie.
it
I
just
really
gets
like
more and
all
more
three of
absurd.
them, which
you
I'm
like
fine
the
with.
second.
Oh, I love all three of them. The first one I did watch was the second movie, and kind of stumbled in. I had a friend in college that the only two movies he watched, the only two types of movies were horror movies and kung fu movies.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So it was a lot of that, and He introduced me to the Evil Dead, and I just was like, "What is this insanity?" And
So I mean, I like Evil Dead. I like the first Evil Dead because I like horror movies where it's like a
yeah,
group
it's more of a traditional
people
horror movie.
and something
Yeah.
weird happens and they all like try to figure out how to deal with it. Like those are the type of horror movies I like.
Yeah, same.
So the second and the third one were like they like with such a tonal shift, like almost a genre shift. And I was kind of like taken aback by it. I was like, yeah, I don't know.
I actually saw Army of Darkness first.
That probably helps.
Yeah, and I didn't know anything. I didn't even know that there was an Evil Dead 1 and 2. Like, I'd just seen Army of Darkness like a few times. And then I said to a friend of mine, I was like, I think there's other movies of this. That's why there's this whole intro about stuff that you don't see. And so
watching the whole movie from the backwards.
Yeah, it's like watching Return of the Jedi and just thinking to yourself, it seems like there's more to this, It's
I feel like I'm missing some backstory.
Yeah.
I've never seen Return of the Jedi.
Really?
I don't watch Star Trek. Oh, Star Wars.
Sorry. Oh no, it's okay. Like, I'm just surprised. Like, when I saw your full list of like Marvel movies and stuff like that, I guess I think that's what blows me away a little bit. Is just
Star Wars is my blind spot.
That's okay. It can be.
Everybody's got one. Star Wars is my blind spot. I keep telling people I missed the point in your life when you watch Star Wars where it like grabs you, like that age.
Yeah.
Like it just missed me.
Yeah.
And so, I think I went on Facebook one time and I was going to live, not live stream, but like live commentate watching the first Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I got 10 minutes in. I was like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
And I turned it off. I was like, I can't do this. I could be doing a million other things. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna do it. Maybe one day I'll sit through it, but
I feel like you should see it. You should watch it with a kid, because if you watch it with a
that's a
kid,
good point.
you tend to like it a lot better. I watched the original trilogy when I was like 10, and I thought they were fine. Like I liked them, but I didn't like. I bought the Micro Machines as a kid. I played with those. I thought they were cool. But I was like 16 when Phantom Menace came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I hated it. I was so mad about how bad Phantom Menace was.
I've seen
And-
the Phantom Menace. I've seen
No.
the Phantom Menace. I've seen the one after it, I think. What's the one
Yeah.
after it?
Attack of the Clones is real
Oh,
bad.
God, that was so
Oh.
bad.
All three of them were bad. The whole prequel trilogy is so
I didn't
bad.
watch the last one. So
I like the third one.
the first
I
one.
hear that.
I
I've
got,
only watched it once.
I
It's
got
not.
forced to
I
watch
mean, is it great? No,
Mm.
but there's thing, and this is one of these things now where we get these remakes of well-known cinema or well-known story genre stories. They're gonna redo the Harry Potter storylines and as a series, which just the idea is perfect. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I loved Star Wars growing up. I was the proper age when the movies were out. My dad had a VHS player, so
Mhm.
I was sitting at home watching the first Star Wars movie as a kid, and it's just like, what is this? And so I had figures, I had toys. I'm pretty sure I had an X-wing as a kid with Luke Skywalker. So
I had a Star Wars book. My mom bought it for me. It was one of those pop-up books. That's all I remember. I remember the Star Wars pop-up book. I don't remember where
I
she
guess
got
it
it from.
was perfect timing for me because I watched those movies, loved them, and I understand why some people have a hard time. Particularly, I feel like if you're under a certain age, because those movies are made with a different pace in mind.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like if you're, and I don't think this is necessarily Javon's case, but if you're younger than 35, you're probably going to have a tough time with these movies because they're not paced and they're not plotted in the fashion that later action genre movies are paced and set up. They're more storyboarded. They tend to lean on action, and they're designed to be overseas commodities for quadrants. The older movies are not. They're almost trying to be just more traditional movies with a sci-fi coding.
I watched the first prequel. I got forced to go see it because it was around. I remember it was around the time I believe Spider-Man came out.
Yeah, that was the same year.
And me and my friends in college, we had a bet which one would do better and which one would be better. So, we went to see Spider-Man, and then we went to see Star Wars. And I remember sitting there going, I'm bored to tears. Like, I'm so bored. Why do we keep talking? Why do we keep going to this group of people in this big hall talking? Like, what? I don't understand what any of this means. I don't know. And then I went to see the second one again. When did the second one come out?
2003, I think. Yeah.
2003. So
Yeah,
I was
something like
here. I was in Connecticut, and my friends went, and I went, and I didn't want to go again, but I went, and I just remember, I was like, wait a minute. This was my first thought. I'm being perfectly honest. I was like, wait a minute. The little boy and the older woman, now wasn't she like 40 in the first movie? Like, it was our first thought. I was like, wasn't she like 35? He's got to be like 16, 17 right now.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute. So So she's got to be in her like this is pedophilia.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
I was remember
Apparently,
the whole movie. I was doing the math in my head to try to figure out how it was okay.
What's his name? Lucas wanted a more drastic age gap thing, and had to be talked down off the ledge for that. I
just know it was the weirdest thing. I was in my mind. I had to do the math to make it okay to continue to watch, because otherwise, I was like, this is disturbing.
It's like the inverse of Raiders of the Lost Ark, because like Indiana Jones was supposed to be like Miriam's teacher or something like that.
Yeah. They had to change that, and
not good.
Which is like your storyline has to be really questionable if you were changing it in the 80s, because you got away with a lot of stuff in the 80s.
Yeah. I showed my kids Three Ninjas one night because it was just on Tubi or something. I was like, we'll just watch Three Ninjas. And there is straight up a criminal with a gun next to a child's head in this movie. And I was like, damn, like they got away with that. Like that would never fly today. Like I would, nor do I want to see that. But like,
we were talking about this recently, how like RoboCop, they had a RoboCop cartoon.
Yeah,
there's no reason why any kid
RoboCop should have been a cartoon.
They had Rambo.
There's a lot.
Rambo had a cartoon.
Yeah,
the Toxic Avenger.
Yeah, NES games, like you know, when you think about like when we were kids, it's like, oh, Nightmare on Elm Street had an NES game that anybody could play. You know, it's like that was that.
I played that. I remember it was terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah,
all of them were bad.
Yeah, they're bad.
Oh gosh, that's those old LJN games. Oh, they're terrible.
That rainbow, man, the LJN rainbow.
That was a mark of shitty quality, right there.
I'll tell you the worst before, because I have a question about something else. Before I go, to me the worst NES game, the one that made me want to break the doggone thing, was that stupid Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game.
No, the first one,
the one with the underwater, and you can never beat it. And
I beat it for the first time this past year. I love it. It's bad. I recognize how bad it is, but like
I don't even care anymore.
I love how weird it is. It's such a weird game. It's so good. It's just, I mean, not good. I mean, it's good in a way that it's so fascinating, because as far as game design goes, no one should make a game like that game was made. Like it should not be made.
Especially once you get further into the game and you realize like, oh, this game is meant you're supposed to either absolutely die all the time and memorize shit, or just get completely frustrated and give up, because it's if you think that part is hard, that's the part that drove everybody to stop playing it.
I don't want to know what the rest was. I don't want to know. I don't want to get more frustrated.
Yeah,
that's why I will never pick up. I would never pick up. I would never beat it. But if you could put it in front of me right now, I wouldn't play it. So all right. So I do want to talk to you more about your writing. Tell us about your process. Like when you're writing, say, I know you've done novels and you've done comic books. Do you have a different process, like structurally, or like, tell us about that?
So as far as comics goes, I always try to I just do a one page, like page 1, this is what I want to happen. Page 2, this is what I want to happen. And I just lay out all my beats of like every page, this is what needs to happen. And then from there, you know, I may not follow that strictly to a T. I might have like, I always create a little wiggle room for myself. I try to like, you know, I try to combine pages where I can, so that I don't have like a scene that goes too long or anything. Like I always think about Ed Brubaker. I think Ed Brubaker is maybe the most perfect writer in terms of pacing. Now, I mean, he's written some duds in his life. Like there's some bad Brubaker comics, but his pacing is always on point. You know, it's like he never does a scene that's more than 3 pages long. Usually he doesn't. You know, Brian K. Vaughan, I think, is another person who does really good. Oh, he's great. Yeah, his pacing is so good too. Again, I always fascinated with how scenes unfold in a comic and how many times we change and move. Um, and that's why I don't like a Bendis comic, I guess, is because Bendis comics don't tend to move a lot. I feel like there's just lots of pages of people talking and saying and all sounding roughly the same. We're all just a bunch of clever people doing a bunch of clever quips and stuff like that. And
His Daredevil's a little different though.
yes, now his Daredevil's great. Like I love his Daredevil, but his DC work is
I haven't.
oh god, don't waste your time. It's all bad. There's not a bit of good in it. It's awful. Event Leviathan, I really wanted to like it.
Say that. I like.
I
I like.
did.
You know what though? I do like his Daredevil.
Yeah, it's great.
His Daredevil's amazing. His
Perfect.
Avengers wasn't that bad. Like I liked the what he was trying to do with it. It was almost like he was trying to ground it.
Yeah.
Like instead of it being this ultra cosmic thing, he was trying to kind of keep it grounded.
Yeah.
Now I do realize like the way the dialogue is very specific to Bendis, but I think that's like his calling card now. And a lot of writers have like calling cards.
Yeah.
I mean, Brian K. Vaughan is like the king of like cliffhangers.
Yes.
Like he loves a good cliffhanger.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm not against Bendis. I do his Daredevil. I will read that over and over and over and over.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's great.
But I have this theory. There's never been a bad Daredevil writer.
Yeah, no, you're probably right about that.
Never been a bad.
I can't disagree with that at all. Yeah,
the character's resume of creators and runs is immaculate.
Yeah, for sure. I feel I kind of feel that way about Moon Knight too at times, except for Bendis's Moon Knight. I didn't like.
Can I read Bendis? Bendis had the Moon Knight where he had like 3 multiple personalities. And was like Captain America, Wolverine.
And I like that.
I might have bought the first issue.
Yeah, that premise is okay, and I like the Maleev artwork. I'm always a sucker for Maleev's art, but again, it's all about pacing for me, and it takes him 12 issues. What Grant Morrison could have done in 3.
Well, Grant, his thing is he just throws a lot at you.
I'm all for it. Please hit me with everything. Like
yeah. Like I actually, so I Grant Morrison's one of my favorites. And everybody knows I'm a Mark Waid fan from like forever.
Oh yeah, I've met Wade a couple times. He's a good dude.
I'm hoping to meet him at Baltimore Comic-Con.
He's a good dude.
I'm hoping I get to meet Mark Waid. I might just like talk his ear off.
Yeah.
So if Mark, if you're listening, just listen. Just pretend like we're friends already, and then you'll be fine. But I the one thing I've taken me personally as a writer, and the thing I'm kind of struggling with is I always try to pack so much stuff in the book. Like so much plot, and like I know I need to like let character moments like breathe, and Vaughn is very good for that, and Brubaker is very good for that. Waid is amazing for Waid. Waid. But Grant Morrison, his stuff is different. Like he puts the character beats in between and around the plot. You know what I mean? Like the plot keeps running, keeps churning, and then he just gives you the beats around it.
Yeah.
Whereas, hi Kyron, what's going on, man?
Hello.
Where I feel like Brian Vaughn will almost stop the plot to have a moment.
Yeah.
Which I love. Like how do you what are your tenets like in your head? Like these are the things that I absolutely need to do while I'm writing a story.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to comics, I haven't really made enough comics to really have like a thing that I keep going back to. I mostly just want to see something cool that gives the audience something that they want to see. When it comes to writing a book, my main thing is that I don't know, I want to build someone who's sympathetic I want I don't know. I want my characters. This is kind of the weirdest thing. I don't know how this happened. I was writing my first Everland book, which is a Peter Pan horror book, and I have this boy who's supposed to be our lost boy, and he gets introduced into the world, and I just kind of wrote this character as like, oh, he's like you and me. He's our everyman character. He's introduced into the Lost Boys, and he does not want to be in Neverland. He hates being here. He's deathly afraid of everything going on, but he's still pretty brave. He's trying, you know. And I wrote a female protagonist who is supposed to be the Tiger Lily character. She's sort of this warrior princess girl. I shouldn't say princess. She's just this warrior girl. There's nothing princess about her. She actively rejects all of it. And I really just thought to myself when I was going into it, I was like, I want someone to fight a giant crab. That's all I wanted.
That's all you wanted. We just got to get there.
Yeah, I just want a scene of someone fighting a giant crab. And so she, you know, this giant crab kills her father. And so this is her like, I'm going to get revenge, you know, to do this thing. And so she goes and does it. And then from there, I was like, well, that's all I wanted. I was like, but I love this character. She has like, you know, the Monster Slayer thing is just the start. What do we do with her after that? And so I keep playing up that Monster Slayer thing. And then when it gets to the end of the book, like she finally meets this Lost Boy character who had his own stories going this whole time. And she has her own stuff. And these two threads intertwine. And I remember sitting at a coffee shop and I was like, oh, I get to have these two characters talk to each other for the first time. And I'm sitting there just thinking like, what are they going to say to each other? And they're talking and stuff. And I'm like crying in this coffee shop because it's like, these two aspects, these two characters finally got to interact. And it was like a really sweet, kind moment where they just gelled so perfectly. And I'm like, I was just amazed that all worked so organically. Like I knew I was going to have the meat, but I didn't know until I got it down on paper, like how well it was going to work,
right?
You know? And then in the second book, they're just friends and they hang out together and, you know, they go adventuring. They got to kill another like terrible god that's trying to take Peter Pan's place. And I just wanted to build their friendship. That was my goal now. It was like we started with my goal is fight giant crab, and now I'm like, well, I just want to show these friends hanging out all the time, you know, in a fantasy world.
Like the characters told you what they wanted or needed.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know that I've ever had that that happen before writing these books, and it's just, I don't know. I have those things, you know, it's like other stuff. I think to myself, if I've got like a real commentary that I like, this is the thing that's pissed me off. Like I got to write about this, you know, like how can I don't know. Like I deal with a lot of religious trauma in my writing. Just, I was raised missionary Baptist. I got a lot of trauma that I'm trying to work through. and you know, I've got nothing against, you know, I've got nothing against God. We're all right. It's just everybody else that has to do with
I get it.
Growing up, you know. And so I find, you know, I tweeted one day, I was like, you know, one day I'll write a book that doesn't feature someone telling off a religious figure. But today is not that day.
You know? I get it. I mean, we're all writers here, so I understand, you know, we everything is therapeutic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, my first comic books were all reflective of me losing my sister. Mm-hmm. And then when my mom passed, then that started to, you know, be reflective. Mm-hmm. Like, and now like I'm a father and everything that I'm writing is like parents. Like
oh, right.
Parent, reflect, you know, parent this, parent that. Mm-hmm. And actually I used to have a lot of, well, the horror book I'm working on has a little bit of religion in it. I was raised Seventh-day Adventist. I don't have trauma, but I always, and I know a lot of people that go to my church aren't going to agree with me on this, but I always like to take themes and aspects from the Bible and just kind of treat them as fictional characters as opposed to slavenly, like this happened in the Bible. Like,
Right.
no, I'm
Yeah.
just going to do my version of such and such. So I understand, and I always feel like the best stories come from, you taking a piece of you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Go
No,
ahead,
for
Jamari.
sure. Yeah.
So I would like to know personally, like, what was it that got you started with freelancing, and how did you start that process?
Like I think it's weird. It's weird to think about that. Did you guys ever do like Live Journal or Zanga like back in the
I
day?
did
Like
live journal.
back in the day, like that was
Wait. What is
so.
that?
So it was kind of like pre-social media, really. Like you just had like a little blog, and people would follow you, and they'd click like on the stuff that you wrote,
I
and
didn't
that
know
was
that.
yeah.
Learn something new
George R.
today.
R. Martin still keeps his running.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's cool. Yeah, but I remember writing. I wrote a little bit of fiction on my Live Journal, I think, and in addition to just your typical journaling stuff, and I just remember people liking it. They would just like tell me, "Oh, this is cool." It's like, "Oh, thanks." It's like it wasn't huge, just a couple of friends. And I remember that being kind of the first time of feeling validation of, oh, other people read a thing that I did, and that's pretty neat.
Always nice.
Yeah, it's always a good feeling. And then I started working for Sequart in college because I was like, I found Timothy Callahan's book, Grant Morrison, The Early Years, which is just a bunch of essays about Grant Morrison's early comics, and it's super, super good. And that's how I started working with Sequart and freelancing with them and helping out. And I wrote my Batman book, and I was like, wow, I wrote 100,000 words about Grant Morrison's Batman. And then I was like, oh my god, I wrote 100,000 words about Grant Morrison's Batman. Like, I could have written 100,000 words of something of my own,
Right.
you know? And I kept lying to myself into thinking that I was writing for comics. And I'm like, I'm not writing comics. Like, I'm writing about comics. And that's not going to get me a comic job. Making comics will get me a comic job, you
Yeah.
know? And, I got to interview a lot of cool people. I interviewed Peter Laird from TMNT. I interviewed Mark Waid, actually. Like, I just want to talk about Shazam with Mark Waid. And so I emailed him and I was like, can I interview you about Shazam? And he goes, yeah, if you like. And so I sent him like a bunch of questions, and he was very gracious and took his time. And now he's got a Shazam book out, which I'm just so stoked about. It's like, it's so cool to see. But then Kickstarter, trying to do some Kickstarters and stuff like that. I kickstarted my first 2 comics on Kickstarter well over 10 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Or it was about 10 years ago. It's hard to remember how long it was. It was 10 years ago, somewhere around there.
Kickstarter's been around that long?
Yeah. It was in those days too, you could fund a comic a little bit easier than I think you can today. I
Why do
feel
you
like,
say that?
well, I'm not discouraging anybody. Like, anybody, like, by all means, Kickstarter is still very viable, but I just think a lot of people have been burned by Kickstarter in the past, by stuff not getting done, by people not getting stuff turned in and turned around. And so it's harder to get backers, I think, than it used to be. And I mean, seriously, between those 2 comics, I made a little over $9,000.
Oof.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, worth noting is, of that $9,000, I saw basically zero of it, because a lot of that went back to the artists and then the printing and shipping. I got a little bit of money in the end, but ultimately it was just it all went back to production. That's all it was. But I also go, well, but I made a comic, and I don't
Right.
really care. Like, I did the thing, so I was
And you can
happy.
keep selling your books too. Like,
Yeah,
now
yeah.
that it's made, you know.
Yeah, and I can keep reprinting them and stuff, and it's not and my reprinting stuff, I wouldn't go through who I went through before. I've got a much more affordable, easier printer that I can go through now, and so it's just a better ordeal now. But it was kind of the Wild West whenever we were doing it, because I don't know, people just were a lot more free to donate than they are now, I feel like. So
Yeah,
um,
it's a little different. Like
yeah,
now, I feel like there are people who, and I'm not. This is not a criticism.
sure,
What I'm about to say is not a criticism. I
it's
have
all
to
good.
preface it because I don't want anybody to come back at me and get
Mm,
upset. But there are a lot of people who do a Kickstarter every comic book
yes.
for every one they want to put out, and like let's say they have a series,
Mm,
and I don't have a problem with it. But my
right.
whole thing is to try to get to the point where we don't have to do a Kickstarter for every book,
Right.
you know. And but I know a lot of people don't. That's not the way their formula is. Like,
Right.
you know, they look. We're gonna do a book, and you know, we're gonna use it as basically pre-orders to,
Yeah.
you know. And I don't have a problem with either way. I'm
Mm,
just personally trying. Like this last book I put out,
mm,
I didn't Kickstarter.
yeah.
The way I looked at it was I would print like 25 to 50 copies,
Mm,
and then I would just market it. And then, but I'm also my own artist. So let's just,
right.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. As somebody who's really awful at art and I can't do anything,
you can
I
absolutely do it.
I've made some fan comics with my son, and my son and I made another fan comic this weekend, and he did all the art, and he is 10, and it looks just as good as my 37-year-old doing my best.
I'm gonna
Um,
tell you the same thing I tell everybody when I'm at Comic Cons.
mm,
They're always like, "Oh, I can't draw. I can't
mm,
draw." It's not that you can't draw; it's that you
mm.
don't know how to draw.
Right. That's fair.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a difference. Like, there are
Yeah.
It's a
people who tell me,
skill
"I
that
don't have
you
an
can
artistic
develop.
bone in my body."
Mm,
Yes, you do.
yeah.
You just like I keep telling people when I started drawing, it didn't look like it does now.
Mm,
Like it absolutely didn't.
yeah.
This is 35 plus years of practice, and so if you want to do it, it's just like playing the piano. I can't play the piano to save my life, but if I wanted to
Mm,
play the piano, I would just learn how to do it and just practice. So, you
right.
know,
Yeah. And I don't know. I have a great time making comics with my son, and I probably should try to do better. But I also am like, he's at the age now, like he really needs to be the one that's doing all of the art here, so that he can like improve his own skills
absolutely,
and get
I
better
got
at
you.
it. And so he's a fun writer though. He comes up with just the best jokes. He's so funny.
That's
He's
awesome.
Yeah, it's good. It's good making comics with him. It's
Does it
good.
re-energize you that he's
Oh,
interested in writing now?
oh, absolutely. Like he we made a some Shovel Knight fan comics. Shovel Knight's like an independent video game and stuff. And so
I know the game.
what's that?
I know that game.
Yeah, it's so good. Like all of the Shovel Knight games are great. And we sat down. He goes, "We should make a Shovel Knight fan comic." I was like, "Okay, well, what would you want it to be?" He goes, "Well, we should do a comic for each of the major knights. That's four of them. We should do 8-page comics a piece. So we could do a 32-page comic, and then we could do like an 8-page finisher and stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like writing everything down. I go, "Okay," and I go, "So what are you thinking about like for page one?" He goes, "Okay, page one, there's this. Page two, splash page." And like I mean, within 2 hours, he had outlined a 32-page comic and was ready to go. And I was just like, "Oh, all right. Yeah." Like, I mean, it needed some editing, but I was like, he was 9 at the time. I was like, for 9, like, that's pretty impressive to think in that way and to think what kind of jokes he wants to do and everything. It was great. And he he really, like, I can't remember what happened. we were sitting there at the coffee shop. He's sitting there and he's drawing and stuff. And he goes, "Oh, I think the joke should be this," and just his sense of humor. I was crying. I was laughing so hard. I was just like, how are you this funny at 10? Like you're so funny. I was like, it blew my mind how good he is. So, but yeah, it's a fun little Luigi's Mansion comic is what we made this past weekend. And so
That's awesome.
it's good. Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Like I always struggle with like, I don't want my son to be in the creative, like I want him to be creative and do creative stuff and draw. Like I love when he gives me his daddy, I drew this for you. But man, I don't want him to try and do it as a career.
Oh no.
Do something else. Something that you could do this and then you get a promotion and they give you more money and because my stepdaughters want to do fashion and animation. And I'm like, you guys just pick the hardest routes possible.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
especially fashion. Like fashion is so much harder. Fashion might be the hardest route to take.
Yeah, probably.
And now that I think about it, because you can I don't need Marvel to put out a comic book.
Right.
I can go out and make a comic book. If I'm an architect, it's easy. It's probably easier to get an architectural job than it is to get a job in fashion. Like designing stuff. Like you almost, I can't even imagine. Like it's a really difficult route to go. It might be harder than being a writer.
Oh, absolutely.
You say no, Jamar?
I feel like I think the entry to fashion is where the biggest problem. Like the entry to the point where you can get in and legitimately sell your designs and sell the clothing you make. I think that barrier of entry is crazy.
But that's what I'm saying. Like being a writer, like we're just talking to Cody right here, and Cody has already published books. He doesn't have to wait for anybody. You can sit down, write your book, come up with a couple of $100 and print your book out or put it out digitally. Like there's no roadblock to start.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, you can just like make a fashion line. I mean, but I mean, that's way more money involved than any other creative field. I would say animation might be second. That's just but I'm rambling.
It's all good.
So we've talked about your career. We talked about your road to where you are. Let's talk about some fun stuff. What are you reading now?
I am reading the Astro City Metro books.
Okay.
So I'm working on the third one. I'm gonna try and get to that. Hopefully soon. That's on my list. I'm also going to read. I have put it off. I've got all of Jack Kirby's Fourth World stuff, and so I really want to read all of the Orion and Mr. Miracle and all of that stuff. I've got all the trades. I just haven't sat down and taken the time to read all of those. And then the last thing that I'm really I'm going to get to this summer is N.K. Jemisin's the City We Became. Have you read any N.K. Jemisin before?
Is this novel or comic?
It's a book. Yeah.
Okay.
She's amazing. Literally like the best fantasy writer going today. She wrote the Broken Earth trilogy a few years ago now. Basically, I think she's the only person to win both the Hugo and Nebula Awards back to back. So
wow.
3 years in a row for the same trilogy of books. Like she's just incredible. So
did she write those books all back to back?
Yeah, they came out
all at one time.
Yeah, I think so. Like I think they all were written kind of at one time, and they came out within 3 years of each, or like a year of each other. And so, yeah, they are. She totally redoes what magic is in fantasy. Like, just her rules of magic are real good, and just I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's just she's just amazing. So she's
Okay.
yeah. As far as comics go, she's the one who wrote that Green Lantern. Oh, I can't think of the name of that Green Lantern comic. It's with it's the new Green Lantern that she came up with. Her name's like Sojourner or So.
Far Sector.
Yeah. She wrote Far Sector, and
I haven't gotten around to reading that yet,
yeah,
and
it's good.
it's terrible, but I need to get around to it.
Yeah. She wrote that comic. It's very, it's high concept. She's really great at high concept stuff. So
I keep telling people a byproduct of doing comics is I read less new ones.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
I just don't have the time, and when I do read a comic, it's usually an older one, but this so I can go to sleep.
Yeah.
You go to sleep on comics?
I don't. So for me, I have to, because my mind's always racing before I go to bed. Doesn't unless I'm like super duper tired. I have to find a way to like, quiet it. So I'll read something I've already read before, and then it'll kind of a wind down. But if I read something I've never read before, then I'm thinking about, okay, what happens next? Or it's almost like I can't watch a new show, something I never watched before I go to bed. Because now, like I'm into From. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I think I know of it. Yeah.
I'm really into From, and I remember watching an episode before I went to bed, and literally all I'm thinking about is the show and what happens next, and oh my gosh, and I want to know, and so I can't do that. So I have to do something that I've already done before to kind of bring me down. But I mean, I've got it. Like I said, I keep telling people I got a ton of of indie books sitting right in front of me that I've helped kickstart that I haven't cracked open, and I really feel bad. But one of these days, I'm gonna do a YouTube series. I'm just gonna read them and then give a review.
It's not a terrible idea.
Well, again, that requires me to stop doing something else and do that. And I'm already on this thing twice a week.
You're a slacker. It's okay.
I am a slacker. So before we go, because I have to get up at 6 a.m.
It's all
and
good.
Trying to go see Guardians of the Galaxy like an idiot. I got a long drive to Philadelphia. Tell it. So if you want to let people know what's coming up for you, what do you anything you want to promote? Now's your time.
Yeah. So my Patreon is patreon.com/popgunchaos. I am doing. I have so much writing on there. There's so just full books on there. It's only $1 and you get literally everything. I am currently writing 3 different novellas that are set in my Peter Pan horror universe of Everland. And so there are 3 novellas that kind of talk to each other and interact with each other. But you can read them all on their own. It's kind of like Grant Morrison's 7 Soldiers. I realized it was not intentional to be that way, but it ended up being that way of just like, something that happens in a chapter in book 1 can show up in book 3 in a later chapter. And so it's just a lot of just interplay with each other. And so that's what's going on my Patreon right now. I'm doing that for the whole year. And then next year, I'll probably be moving on to doing more just like standard fiction, not fantasy, going back to writing kind of like crime noir stuff. Because I haven't done that in a little bit, and I love doing that. Like crime noir is
okay.
I don't know.
I love it too. I love
it
it
calls
too.
to me. It calls.
I think it calls to every writer.
Would you call that like horror adjacent in some ways?
Yeah, the Everland stuff or the crime noir stuff.
The crime noir stuff.
Yeah. I would say a little bit, depending on how it's done. With mine, it's more. I like to write about the town I grew up in. It's called Bolivar, Missouri. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's very, very tiny, but I renamed it to Pinhook because there's a small town that kind of had that same name, and I just kind of process all of my feelings growing up about that town, like they're in in the this book series. And so the first one was really about just what it's like living in a small town, and and then the second one is going to be a much more just like very crime noir focused, and it begins with our main character sitting at an Applebee's, getting drunk because he's got a dead dog in the trunk of his car, and he's got to figure out what to do with this dead dog. So that's how we start.
You're very good with
Yes,
story
yeah,
hooks.
I'll grab somebody.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you. That's that I always think to myself, for me personally, I think the greatest first hook line for anything is in The Gunslinger by Stephen King, where he says, "The man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed." Is you have your bad guy,
Mhm.
you know what he's doing, you know where he is, and you know who the good guy is.
Right.
Like, it's such a perfect sentence. And so there's so many times where I'm like, I try to start things with a perfect sentence that,
Right.
like, we get everybody there together, so
It's a great hook.
yeah, it's great.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on
Thank you.
twice.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Yeah, I
But
appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. I'm
Yeah.
glad that we could have you on and we could finish our conversation.
Yeah, anytime.
Yes, please let us know if you have projects coming up. We will absolutely have you back on to promote it, and we'll continue to promote through the Stoked podcast page on Facebook. And like he said, hit him up on his Patreon and just break the website to take care of stuff. Thank you guys for jumping on. We appreciate
Thank you.
as always, like I said, the Heat Wave 23 tour continues. I will be at Contropolis starting tomorrow. I think it starts at 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then I will be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then after that, I'll be at CradleCon 520 to 521. And then for so on and so forth, you can see right there. But stop by if you're in the Philadelphia area. I would love to see you, say hi, and sell you a book. But thank you guys. Enjoy the weekend. Have a great weekend. And thank you for stopping by a Stoked Podcast, creative talk for creative people. And we will see you next week.
Yep. Thank you all. Have a great day.